I want to try to tell this to you, not as an expert or a scientist, but simply as a young woman. I want to talk about sexual assault.
So, before you zone out in the assumption that you've heard all of this before, or that this is unrelated to you, don't. It is extremely likely that you know someone who has been sexually assaulted or raped, whether or not you are aware of it.
Although it's not comfortable, we have to face it because denial around this issue, which is what I find a lot in this field, is not helping our children. And as a survivor, I know that I'm not alone in this room. It's estimated that 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused before the age of 18.
I don't want to talk about this. I never wanted to talk about this. But not talking about it is what keeps the problem in place. And the solution begins when we break the silence.
People marched holding candles, asking for justice, asking for a change. But there, in one corner of my room, I was sitting all by myself, asking how I could contribute, how I could intervene. As a woman, as an engineer, and as a victim. Yes, as a victim of sexual assault myself, I decided I wanted to take a different route.
I realized that I was completely detached from the reality around me. I know that rape exists. I knew that rape culture was important, but somehow I hadn't processed the extent of suffering that millions of girls undergo throughout their lives. Somehow, in the smoke clouds of paranoia, everything I thought I knew became uncertain. Every truth I knew, every idea about this society, curved into a piercing question mark. My worldview was incomplete. My mind turned into this carousel of intellectual anarchy, and I wondered, was I truly aware of the world around me? Did I really know what happened outside of my school, outside of my home? I realized that I had detached myself from the reality of human suffering, believing there's always a war somewhere in the world, genocide never ends, the use of women and girls half my age as animals who are blamed for being raped was an inevitable part of the fabric of life.
At the beginning of this year, I had a conversation with a peer in which he tried to argue that rape culture doesn't exist. Rape culture can't exist because it's not like every man goes around wanting to rape every woman he sees. That is missing the point entirely. You see, rape culture is not simply about the direct action of rape, the correlation of cause and effect in which a person wants to rape someone, and so they rape someone. Rape culture starts with a joke you make about an exposed pair of legs just asking for trouble. It starts when you see your boss's hand reach out and touch your coworker, obviously making them uncomfortable, but you don't say anything about it. It's when all of these things become normalized to the extent that someone does think that bare legs are asking for something, or that your boss thinks it's okay to take his hand and reach out and touch your coworker again, and from there, we are launched into a vicious cycle of perpetuation and acceptance, where prevalence is turned into invisibility.
Although Islam's ideals are wonderful, the pervasive rape culture and misogyny that surrounds us erase whatever security I had built. My mother grew up thinking that if a man or a woman is a victim of sexual assault, that it is their shame to carry, that it should be something hidden, not seen, and not heard.
Because as human beings, we are really good at hiding painful memories. It's a protective mechanism. And, sometimes those memories don't stay hidden for long. Mine actually resurfaced in my dreams.
The real damage was psychological. I had severe post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, flashbacks which could flare up at any moment. I had trouble stepping out of my apartment without suffering from agoraphobia. I had trouble trusting people because I'd just been raped by a 15-year-old boy. And I felt like a fragile, useless shell of the person I'd once been. So just like that, my life changed.
I thought he would be expelled, and that would be that. He, of course, denied it, and administration made me retell my story again and again, forcing me to relive it again and again. While the adults were making their decision, I had to endure my friends coming up to me and asking me what had happened and listen to whose side they were on. The adults finally made their decision, asking him to leave the school. But there'd be nothing on his transcript saying what he had done or why he'd been asked to leave. He could continue living his life perfectly content, while I was left with nightmares. After he left, I thought that I could heal from this traumatic experience in a supportive place. Sadly, I was wrong. To my surprise, the staff started treating me with less respect, making me feel like it was my fault I had been assaulted. They lectured me about how I needed to prevent situations like this in the future by working on my refusal skills. The counselor there told me that I was a pretty girl and boys acting this way was just a part of life. She said, he was a sweet boy who just made a mistake and my anger wasn't helping anyone. I thought I was going crazy. Had they not been listening? I said no. No one asks for this to happen to them. If teen assault is so normalized, the extent that it's something to be put up with, something seriously needs to change.
But I knew exactly what I was defending myself against, from something that happened when I was 12. And because I had just held a knife to my boyfriend's throat, I felt like I had to tell him the truth. That was the first time I told anyone my secret, that I was sexually abused in childhood.
Victims are in a space of extreme vulnerability immediately following an attack. Not only has their body been violated, but their autonomy, their humanity, their sense of identity have too. Rape is one of the only crimes in which a victim's body is used as a weapon against them, and this alone is enough to inflict severe psychological harm. That's why, for many victims, secondary victimization will then lead to self-blame, sexual re-victimization, promiscuity, or low self-esteem. The word rape may seem unapproachable after an attack, and they might cover up or hide the crimes against them.
Sexual assault victims sometimes tend to silence themselves, and that is one major factor that causes the victims to lose their voices. Sexual assault victims are sometimes confused. They ask all sorts of questions to themselves. Was my skirt too short? Did I make it clear to him? He said he did it because he loved me. Am I making this too serious? Am I qualified to be a victim?
So here are 3 of my own truths that I want to posit today. First, to perpetuate rape culture is to separate a person's body from the human being inside of it. Second, rape culture itself is so pervasive that we don't even notice it anymore. And third, my strongest weapon in fighting against it is through telling my story. That summer in 2015, I was drugged and sexually assaulted during a study abroad trip in China. What I realize now was that this assault didn't just entail the attacker objectifying my body in thirst for power and sex. It also entailed the twisted reverse. while he had looked at me as a neck to grab onto, an empty hole to fill through my disturbed conscience and choppy memory, I had also begun to dismember this boy's body into individual pieces that didn't conjoin to form a human. A hand up my skirt, a mouth spouting crude comments about my body, a pair of arms and a pair of legs on either side of me. There was no way that these parts, these floating limbs, could possibly be attached to a living, breathing person. In that moment, to me, we were both just soulless, lifeless puppets.
I'd walk into the bathroom and I would seriously turn the lights off. I would shower in complete darkness so I wouldn't have to stand there under the water, have to look down and see my body. 'Cause this thing had brought me so much pain that seeing it filled me with disgust. I honestly avoided mirrors like one would avoid an ex at a party. I refused to acknowledge it, look at it, appreciate it. I craved physical pain to manage the emotional pain.
So when people say that rape is just a sexual misunderstanding between a woman and a man, and that it's something that we victims need to get over, they fail to comprehend how life-changing these crimes can be, how hopeless and challenging the process of recovery can seem to victims. And it's this failure of understanding which also leads to victim-blaming comments, suggesting that a woman got what she deserved for her behavior or her poor decisions. She should have known better. She shouldn't have been drinking so much that evening, or flirting with that guy, or gone hiking on her own.
Imagine telling someone you think you trust about your traumatic experience, and then instead of offering unconditional love and support, they blame you. Or say something so hurtful that you don't know who you can trust anymore. I have had people say some terrible things to me regarding my rape, saying that it was my fault or that I shouldn't have been drinking that night.
My downward spiral came to a halt one day when I was walking down my hallway. I caught my reflection in the mirror. It's looking in my eyes, but it was like I was looking into an empty shell. Like the flame of my spirit was about to flicker out. I was terrified because I knew I was dying. I texted a friend, "I can't do this anymore." And she got me help. I went to rehab September 29th, 2009. I remember feeling that morning that it was the worst day of my life. But now when I look back, I could see that it was the best day of my life. Because the day that I got professional help and told them the truth is the day that I got on the upward spiral of mental health.
So what does it take to change rape culture? What does it take to erect new information, rewire our brains, unlearn our fundamental truths? And in this way, can we unlearn fear, inequality, hatred? In my view, the first step is a conversation.
So how will you be there for someone you love that has been raped? Will you be able to help them? Know that bearing witness to their trauma and offering unconditional support might help them go on even when they think that they can't.
Today, as a young woman, as a survivor of sexual abuse and a woman who wants to be a future mom, I really want to share my concerns with you. I don't want to force my child into a fearful future, but I'm concerned. I don't want to clip my child's wings and dictate my child's life in every possible way as it was done to me. Today, I stand before you not as an individual, but as the face of those invisible victims who would never get justice, as the voice of those disabled victims and children who won't ever be able to express what they're going through, and as the body of those who have suffered innumerable scars and go through the same trauma every day they think about that particular incident. And for all those parents, millions of those parents who fear about their child's safety every now and then. I know we are hundreds, thousands, and millions of us. I urge to this crowd today to make the unsafe safe, the unarmed empowered, so that we can come together and build a better future for our children, for our loved ones, so that we can raise our children the way they want to. And I know that we all can do this together in whatever capacity we are, in whatever position we are, because every voice against sexual abuse matters.